Alright, so tonight we're going to be doing a very important parasha, Parasha Bechukotai. This is a parasha that I encourage everyone to learn very well, and Parashat Kitavo as well, because a portion of it deals with the tochacha, and that is the rebuke, the very, very stern rebuke that Hashem reminds the Jewish people that they will have to unfortunately undergo a lot of pain and suffering if they don't abide by the Torah mitzvot. Last week in Parashat Behar, we spoke about the incredible miracle. The Jewish people will be able to observe how they were blessed with the yield of 3 years worth of crop if they observed the Shemitah, the sabbatical year. So they were able to see a clear miracle, the hand of Hashem, the blessing. So why did they stop? Eventually, we're told that even though after many cycles of seeing that this is true, that if you observe the Shemitah you will be blessed, you will not lose out by not working for an entire year. So they saw it firsthand. Why should they ever stop? So I gave a brief explanation how sometimes people think they can get away with it. To get away with it meaning to not abide by the law and perhaps retain the same benefits that you had till now. But it doesn't work that way. In the end it catches up with you. Hashem says, I'm the boss, and I'm warning you that you're not going to get away with it. It won't work that way. Only if you observe the mitzvot, you will see blessing. So that was in Parashat Behar, when we spoke about the sabbatical year and the Yovel, the Jubilee year. In Parashat Bechukotai, however, we're dealing with the general concept of observance of Torah mitzvot. In Bechukotai telechu, if you follow my Torah, if you abide by the mitzvot, you will see tremendous prosperity. In other words, the economy will prosper, the weather will cooperate, you will have rain on time, you will have abundant rain, as much as you need. You will not have rain when you don't need it. So you have the weather cooperates, you have the economy will prosper, and if you ever have to go to war, you will be triumphant in the battlefield. You will not lose any battles. Hopefully there won't be any war at all. But even if there is a war, you will defeat the enemy. And it will be in a miraculous way. Even though you may not have too many soldiers, you will see the 5 of you will be able to defeat 100 of them. 100 of you will be able to drive away 10,000 of them. And guess what? We actually saw it in our time as well. In the 6-Day War, if anyone here recalls, that was a miraculous war in 6 days. No one expected that. Even the nations of the world were astounded, and everyone is in agreement that there was some miracle here, because this is not possible to prepare. Strategically, it doesn't make too much sense. And the same thing happened in 1948, the War of Liberation in Israel. Many, many miracles. So we are not only promised that there will be such miracles, we actually experienced them firsthand, and this happened more than once. So if that's the case, that the Jewish people saw clear miracles, that Hashem is on their side, Hashem is going to help them, that they're not going to have any difficulty whatsoever, whether it's with the economy, whether it's with war, whether it's with the weather, then why stop abiding by the law? Why become more secular? Why assimilate to other cultures? Well, we have many, many prophets rebuking us left and right. We see that unfortunately throughout our history, our long history, we've had our ups and downs. But why should there be ups and downs? It should be clear. It should be easy to follow, because after all, don't we see that this is a fact, that what the Torah promises comes true? Obviously we all have free will, and Hashem does not always make it so easy. There is something called an evil inclination. We do have our challenges, we have our temptations, but that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. These are obvious. We're talking about the nation as a whole, not individuals. We're talking about great people, we're talking about priests, Kohanim, during the temple era, that were also not behaving themselves, doing things that are terribly wrong. And not talking about just about bribes and the like, talking about sinful activity. Why should that happen? They saw clear miracles. Whoever was in the Bet HaMikdash, especially the first one, was able to see on a daily basis miracles. So what exactly went wrong? Why didn't they realize that Hashem will bless them if they just follow the Torah mitzvot? Is it that hard? So the answer this time is not because they thought they can get away with it. There's something deeper here. There's something that they did wrong that led to this. Because when someone is observant and eventually becomes secular, stops observing, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually. So something goes wrong. He perhaps loses respect. He loses touch. So we're going to try to figure out what exactly went wrong, how gradually they stopped observing the mitzvot, or they were more lax about it, or they were not as serious about it. Even though they may have kept them, they were not as serious about it. So what exactly went wrong? I think that partially we can explain it with the following Gemara. The rabbis tell us, Al ma avda haaretz. What went wrong? Why was the land lost? Why was the Bet HaMikdash, the temple, destroyed? There are various explanations given, but one explanation is, Al shelo bilchu ala Torah tchila. It's a very puzzling explanation. It means because they did not make the first blessing on the Torah. Asher bachar banu mikol amin. When a Jew goes up to read the Torah, when he receives an aliyah, he makes a blessing. He praises God for having been chosen. He chose us, right, to be His people. He gave us the Torah. So what does it mean they did not make that blessing? Of course they made that blessing. What's the big deal? It's very quick to make that blessing. So what does it mean that they didn't make that blessing? And because of that, the land should be lost. Because of that, we should suffer the consequences of the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. So you understand, there's a question over here. What did the rabbis mean by that? But if you look deeper into what they said, you will understand that this is connected to what happened in our history, how the Jews became detached, slowly but surely, from the observance of the mitzvot. For example, in this week's Parasha, you may notice that on one of the punishments, the Torah says, Hashem says, that you will be punished with 7 punishments. Sheva kachatotechem. So even though we could explain that to mean 7 sins, 7 punishments, the number 7 just means 7, not 6, not 5, 7. In other words, it is describing a situation where the Jewish people failed, perhaps in 7 areas. However, I think you recall from the past, we've spoken about it many times, the number 7 is a special number. 7 represents holiness. 7 is Shabbat, Saturday, is it the 7th day. We had last week the Shemitah, the 7th year. What's holiness? Holiness means something that is elevated, something that is not physical, something that is more spiritual, something that is divine. So anytime we see a connection to 7, we're reminded about holiness, about Kedusha. If that's the case, what's the significance of Sheva in this week's Parasha? So some might say, well, they didn't observe the Shemitah, and that is why they were exiled from the land. It's true. As a result of not keeping the Shemitah, that alone, unfortunately, resulted in being exiled from the land. But there's also a connection to the Torah and the mitzvot. Shabbat, the rabbis tell us, whoever does not keep Shabbat, it's like he does not keep the entire Torah. Shabbat is an ot, it's a brit, it's a covenant, it's a sign of our connection to Hashem. It's not just the observance of Shabbat, it's the holiness of Shabbat. A Jew could easily lose the holiness. In other words, it is possible for him to keep the rituals, to observe the mitzvot, but without holiness, without a real connection. Because holiness is what connects us to Hashem. Hashem is holy. And when we are holy, we connect to Hashem. So it is possible that a Jew may observe some of the mitzvot, but without real holiness. In other words, no real connection, no real attachment. And what happens when a Jew lacks kedusha, lacks holiness in his life, his connection to Hashem becomes kesher rofef, as it's called in Hebrew, a very weak link. It becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. What does that do to him? You'd be surprised. What happens when a Jew's link or connection to that which is holy, to Hashem, becomes weak? With time, he forgets about his identity, what it is to be Jewish. What's so special about being Jewish? What does it mean to be Jewish? He eventually loses touch. And this can happen in one generation, it can happen for sure in several generations. People forget What's the importance of all of this? You know, it's interesting how a lot of descendants of Marranos, those Spanish Jews that converted on the outside, but secretly they still observe some customs. It's interesting how some of the descendants, generations later, recall a grandmother lighting candles and covering it with a basket on Friday. And even the grandmother didn't know why she did it. So there's customs. That's what remains, customs. And they don't even know why they're doing it. So a connection is lost. Identity is forgotten. And as one great rabbi said, the greatest sin a Jew can commit is that he forgets that he's the son of the king, that he's a prince, Shu ben Melech. You know who you are? You know what your mission is all about? You know how special it is that you have the Torah? Incredible story that happened years ago to an Israeli who was secular. He decided that he's going to go tour Africa with his motorcycle. Not the whole continent, but a certain country or two. And as he's traveling, he was stopped by some tribe, some wild tribe. Why did they stop him? It could be they wanted to rob him, they wanted to hurt him. It was clear that they were not his friend. It was clear that they were not going to let him go so easily. Somehow they communicated, and they asked him, "Where are you from?" And he said, "I'm from Israel." As soon as he said, "Israel," everything changed, the whole atmosphere changed. "Oh, you're the chosen nation. You belong to the chosen people." They treated him nicely, they befriended him, they sat him down, they wanted to talk to him. All of a sudden everything changed. And he's thinking to himself, this is a secular Israeli. What's the big deal? Chosen nations. What is a chosen nation? He doesn't even know what that means. He was so secular, so distant, he was shocked. They were treating him nice because he's from Israel, because he's from the chosen people. At the end, they let him go. When he returned to Israel, he looked into it, he investigated, he went to a seminar, and Chazar B'Tshuva, and he returned to his roots. He became an observant Jew. He didn't know at all, he wasn't taught this, he was deprived of a real Jewish education, and this is how he learned about it. Now obviously we all know that this is orchestrated from above, and mikriyut, things like that don't happen by themselves. And from Shamayim, from heaven, they helped him find his way back home. But look what they knew that he didn't know. You are a chosen nation. You have a special responsibility, a holy mission. He didn't know. And as a result of not knowing, he obviously didn't understand the importance of observing the mitzvot. There's something to a mitzvah. It's not just the reward, the compensation. It's not just that if you don't do it, you're going to be punished. That's too simplistic. There's something about being a holy nation, something about our mission. There's something that the mitzvah does to us if we observe it. But if one is not really connected to it, then he won't feel it. People can keep Shabbat, but not feel what Shabbat really is. The holiness of Shabbat is missing in their life because they just rush through it, perhaps. They eat the good food, of course. Why not have some gefilte fish? Or some gondi, right, for you? Right? Why not? It's tasty. Good food. Yeah, but Shabbat is not only about good food. To experience Shabbat properly, one has to observe the mitzvot that relate to Shabbat. Otherwise, he loses touch with it. He might try to look for some leniency to do something which is against the halakha, against the Jewish law on Shabbat. To find a leniency to do something which is against the Torah, why would you search for leniency? Because you don't appreciate what Shabbat is. So, lack of appreciation for what people do for us results in ungratefulness, right? So imagine lack of appreciation for what Hashem does. Not only is there ungratefulness, it's complete detachment. So that is what is meant over here by a lack of holiness in the blessing that was said before the Torah. Even though they may have said the blessing, what the rabbis really meant is that the great scholars of the time, we're talking about the time of the Bet HaMikdash, the temple stood still. They didn't appreciate what they were doing. They didn't really relate to it properly. They didn't treat it as something holy and special, just as a ritual. And this can happen to the best. So these are very valuable lessons. If this can happen then to the best, to the more scholarly, where are we? So it's not just about learning and knowing, being knowledgeable of the Torah. It's about realizing the importance of this connection and what needs to be done to maintain that connection. Holiness. Something called holiness that not everyone understands. What does it mean to be holy? So, as a result of that lack of holiness, this brought about a detachment from the Torah mitzvot, even though they were still observing, but a detachment from the essence of what the mitzvah is supposed to be, and therefore a detachment from Hashem. Hashem says, if that's the case, then you don't need the temple. You might as well move. Why don't you just move to another country? You don't need to be in Israel. Eventually, the goal, of course, of all the punishments and of all the exile is for them to realize, well, what am I doing here? They don't like me. They don't treat me as an equal citizen. I belong at home in Israel. Some people understood the message with time. Some people still don't understand the message. And that's why we need Mashiach. Mashiach, of course, will bring us all back home. But in the meantime, a lot of people, as a result of assimilation, became more and more detached, and they're farther removed, and it's harder for them to return, because we're talking about 2-3 generations sometimes of detachment, of lack of observance. See, with Ashkenazi Jews who grew up in Russia, communist rule, they could be several generations without Torah in the family, without mitzvot. Sephardic Jews, perhaps, who may have been deprived, one generation, because each one of those born in Israel perhaps remembers a father or a grandfather who was observant. Most of them do. So for them, it may be a little easier to come back and realize the mistakes that were made. But for some, it's more difficult. But I'm not concerned so much about their return, because Hashem helps with their return. What is important for us is to make sure that this doesn't happen to begin with, that the Jew becomes detached. And obviously to help those who want to come back. But in the end, Hashem brings everyone back. Everyone will be given an opportunity to come back. Messages are being sent all the time. But the type of messages in Parasha Bechukotai are very, very harsh. That's the difference between messages that perhaps individuals get, either in a dream or in some other way where they're reminded that they're Jewish. All kinds of ways that Jews will receive messages. Hashem wants them to come back. But here in Parasha Bechukotai, we're confronted with harsh decrees. Very, very, very powerful punishments. Very, very harsh and severe punishments that reminds us of the Holocaust. And that is why anybody who wants to understand why the Holocaust happened, we don't have a clear explanation for it. Obviously, we don't have the ability to ask Hashem, why did this happen? But we do have a little bit of direction from the Torah, from Parashat Bechukotai and Parashat Kitavo. Anyone who wants to have a little bit of an understanding of why pogroms happened, why Holocausts occur, inquisitions. After all, this is not the only Holocaust. People think, oh, why did the Holocaust occur? Which one do you mean? The destruction of the first and second temple were also Holocaust. Millions of Jews were killed then. What about then? Oh, but we don't have videos and pictures of them. People are focusing on what they've seen in pictures and what they've heard recently happened. But in reality, this has happened throughout our history. 1648 and 1649, 300,000 Jews were massacred by Chemenist pogroms in Poland and the Ukraine. Not everyone is familiar with that. So we've had many, unfortunately, pogroms of all kinds, and terrible decrees, and persecutions, and anti-Semitism, which is till today. And you wonder to yourself, wait a minute, how come this anti-Semitism doesn't go away? What are we doing wrong? We befriended them, we studied in colleges and got degrees, and we contributed to medicine and to the sciences. It's a fact. Look at the Nobel Prizes. So why should they hate us? It can't just be jealousy. Hashem says, no, it's not jealousy. It's what I wrote in Parashat Bechukotai. Anti-Semitism, unfortunately, will continue to flourish till the end of days. Nothing to do whatsoever with jealousy. Even though sometimes people are jealous, of course we know that. It has to do with our behavior. And Hashem wants to remind us. How is He going to remind us? He doesn't speak to us directly. Right? There's no direct line. So He has to tell us in different ways. One way will be the weather will not cooperate. What does the weather have to do with it? Parashat Bechukotai tells us that this will be one indicator. Since you break the laws of the Torah, I will break the laws of nature. Because nature consists of a system of laws. You break the laws, I have to show you. I have to show you in a way that you hopefully will understand, as best as possible, what you're doing wrong. So the weather will break its laws. You won't have rain, you'll have famine, God forbid. It will be a dry year. And you will wonder why. And then some smart aleck is going to say, oh, it must be global warming, and it must be El Niño and La Niña, and all kinds of excuses. All right, fine. Let's agree that there's something called El Niño or La Niña. But why is there such a thing? Who caused that? Where did it come from? Why not say it's coming from above? Why not? It says so. Well, you forgot. You forgot to read. You forgot to study. It says so clearly. So the weather is one indicator that helps us understand if we're doing something right or wrong. Another indicator is the economy. Something going wrong with the economy. That's also an indicator. It's all in Parashat Bechukotai. And the third indicator, which is a very important one, is war. Especially what happens at the battle. Do we win? Do we lose? Is it hard or not? All of that is a clear sign whether He approves of our deeds or does not approve of our deeds. What does all this tell us? That the Goral, the destiny of the Jewish people, heavily depends on the Torah mitzvot. Why should it depend so much? Well, the easy answer is because of Esav. If you recall, Esav was very unhappy when Yitzchak gave the blessings to Yaakov. What is Yaakov doing with my blessings? These are blessings that pertain to this world. And Yaakov is interested in the world to come. Olam haba. He doesn't have to have all the benefits of this physical world. He's not a physical man. And Yitzchak says, you know what, you're right. But the berachot that I gave him are conditioned. If he observes the Torah, then he can have both. If he doesn't observe the Torah, so God forbid, then you're right. Then you will take it away from him. So there will be times when you will rule, Yitzchak says. There will be times when you will be on top and he will be at the bottom. What can we do? Because that's the accusation of Esav, the minister of Esav, upstairs. And that accusation hurts us very, very much. Why should we have the blessing if we're not following the Torah mitzvot? Isn't that our agreement with Hashem? That is the covenant that we pretty much committed to. That's the simple explanation. The more detailed explanation is seen in Parashat Bechukotai and is seen in Parashat Kitavon. That Hashem says, don't look at this as a punishment per se. If I send all this trouble to you, all this trouble that you will go through, besides it being an atonement, of course, trouble, pain, and suffering is always an atonement. It's more of a reminder. So let's forget about accusation right now. Let's forget about atonement right now. It's such a powerful punishment because it serves as a reminder. Hashem says, I don't want you to be lost like many nations who disappeared from the scene. I made a promise. You're going to be my people till the end of days. You're always going to be mine. I don't want to let you disappear. And you're so few compared to the Chinese, you're few. It's easy for those who are few in numbers, minority, to disappear, as many have. We did not disappear. So what does all this mean? That not only, hopefully, will we be impressed that something is wrong, and hopefully do teshuvah and return to Him, which is what Hashem wants. Not only that, but also, what's interesting, what's fascinating, is that the non-Jew himself will notice, wow, what's going on? Why are they so hated? Now, some non-Jews will get the wrong impression. Oh, it must be God abandoned them. That's it. He replaced them. We are the new Jews now. There are people that claim that. But, sir, read on what the Torah says, read on what the prophets say. It never happened and it never will happen. Hashem made promise that He will never abandon us. He will make us go through the pain and suffering, that yes, but abandon us completely? No. He made a promise and Hashem will keep His promise. So there are two promises here. What are the two promises that the non-Jews can also observe? One is, you will have to go through this pain and suffering so that you get the message clearly. I'm going to have to do it in a very powerful way. Raise the volume, otherwise you won't get the message. And still, some people don't get the message. But it will be so powerful that even the non-Jew will say, what's going on over here? Why are they being persecuted? Why can't we eradicate anti-Semitism once and for all? But then they will also observe another part. And that is, wow, despite it all, despite all the pain and suffering, they're still around. Mark Twain is one of those individuals who observed this. He analyzed it, he studied, he stopped to think, something is going on over here. And he says, what's the secret of their immortality? Immortal. They were beaten, hurt, exiled, kicked out from so many countries, and they're still around. All those people who kicked them out are not around. They're all gone, they all disappeared. The Greeks, the Romans, all these nations. But the Jews are still around. So what is that secret? He doesn't answer his question, but we know. We know. We read it in the Haggadah of Pesach, V'hi she'amda lavotenu. What is exactly that held us together as a nation? It was the Hashgacha of Hashem. The Hashgacha, the divine providence of Hashem, that did not allow every generation of enemies who stood up against us to annihilate us, God forbid. He did not allow that to happen. In every generation they tried, and we have no idea how many times they tried. We just know a little bit that is recorded in our history, but you know all the meetings that they had that perhaps never materialized, all the plans that they had that never worked out. We're familiar with the famous Haman, Megillat Esther. He was trying and he failed. Baruch Hashem, Hashem helped. But how many times they tried that we don't know about? Hashem knows. The verse says Hashem performs miracles on His own. What does it mean on His own? Of course no one helps Him. It means that no one is aware of. There are many, many miracles that no one is aware of, only Hashem. So here we see a very important detail that I've mentioned many, many times. It's important to repeat, is that ignorance is the worst enemy of the Jew. Not knowing, not learning. It's really the worst enemy of man. Of man, of any man, not just of the Jew. To not know. Knowledge is power. The more we know, the more we have an understanding of what's going on. We won't understand everything there is to understand. We're only human, we're limited. But the greater knowledge, the more we study, the more we can understand the differences between human beings, the differences between cultures, and perhaps it will help us be more tolerant of others who are different from us. Learning. Learn with an open mind, and of course, pay close attention to your own heritage. This is where you come from. Especially for the Jew who has the responsibility of transmission. How are you going to transmit if you don't know it yourself? In the olden days, they didn't have schools. Today, we can depend a little bit on a good school. And even then, people minimize the importance of it, and in order to save a few dollars, send their child to a public school. And that's not a place where he's going to learn too much about Judaism. That's a shame. So in this week's Parasha, as well as in some additional parashot in the book of Devarim, we are introduced to the future. This is what will happen in the future. And guess what? Unfortunately, just about all of this that we're reading in Parashat Bechukotai and in the other parashot, it actually happened. It actually happened. Just look at the Holocaust. If you were to read about the Holocaust in detail, it's incredible. It's so painful. It's unbelievable what they went through. And anyone who survived, there was one great rabbi said, any Jew who survived the Holocaust, it can only be because two angels were watching over him at all times. Otherwise, he would never have survived. Okay, so now the question is, then why should it be so harsh? Why should the punishment be so severe? So we said, It's in order to impress upon the Jew that this is something from Shamayim, something from heaven. This is not natural, with the goal of having him return. Hashem wants the Jew to return to him. So if he doesn't get the message, somehow Hashem has to raise the volume until he realizes what's going on. And a lot of people have done teshuvah, have repented and returned as a result of them seeing that what is happening to them is not normal. It's not natural. But why is it so harsh? Why did they suffer so much? So there's a verse, a very important verse in this week's Parasha that says towards the end that appears to be out of place. As Hashem is describing to us the punishments, He also says, "V'zacharti et beriti." I will remember my covenant with Yaakov, with Yitzchak, and with Abraham. So usually, when Hashem says that, He means that as a result of my covenant with them, I will redeem you, I will look after you. But here, this verse is somehow mixed with the punishment. This verse really doesn't belong there. It belongs at the end, after all the punishment occurred. Hashem says, but don't think that I have abandoned you. I will remember. I have a covenant and I don't break my promise. So what does that mean? Why is it here? Why is it mentioned here? So I saw a beautiful mashal. There were two thieves that were caught. And they went before the judge. The judge heard the case. One of them he gave 2 years, and the other one he gave 10 years. The same thing. They committed the same exact crime. So those who were around the court asked the judge, "Your Honor, why him only 2 and him 10? He says, the one that got 2 years, he's a ganav ben ganav. His father was also a thief. What do you expect? Like father, like son. That's what he picked up at home. But this one, he's the son of a rabbi. Lo yafeh. Not nice. How could he become like that? How could he do what he did? He needs to be taught a very, very strong lesson. I gave him 10 years. It's not right. It's not proper. The Jewish people, we are from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. For us to behave in the way we have is not right. So therefore, our punishment is greater. But that doesn't make sense. Is that fair just because our lineage is special? Just because our lineage, we should be treated this way? It's not only about lineage. It's because you will be compensated for observing of the mitzvot. You're going to have a tremendous share in the world to come. You know what you're about to receive when Mashiach comes? As a result of all that reward that you're about to get, you have to also suffer the consequences for not behaving yourself. On the one hand, you're going to get a lot. Well, if you're going to get a lot of reward, then if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you will be punished accordingly. So that is why we stand out. We stand out in experiencing such pain and suffering because Hashem wants to remind us of our commitment to Him and wants us to return. Plus, because of what's awaiting us, the tremendous reward. After all, look at who you come from. You're not just an ordinary people that can be excused. Well, they don't know any better. You should know. You're the people of the book, Am HaSefer. If you only were to learn that book, you would realize the importance of your mission. So therefore, the punishment, for a variety of reasons, has to be more severe. However, let us not forget that same V'zacharti, that same remembrance that Hashem will remember, that covenant is also meant for the good. In the same way that Hashem reminds us where we come from, Hashem says, I will also remember what I promised to your forefathers and what I promised to you through the prophets, that one day you will be redeemed. One day you will head back home. And this is what we're seeing today. We are actually in the midst of that process of the Messianic era, that little by little, that land is no longer full of swamps as it was 100 years ago. There's no more malaria as far as I know. There was once upon a time. there's freeways, and there's orchards, and there's institutions of Torah. It's being developed. It's a beautiful place. It really is. But it still has its struggles. Why should it still have struggles? Because it's incomplete. You still have a lot of Jews, men, women, and children who don't know what it is to be Jewish, who are not proud of their Judaism. And unfortunately, their behavior is not befitting to what Hashem expects of us. So things cannot be 100% just yet. So on the one hand, we do see a tremendous amount of blessing and protection of Hashem. On the other hand, we see that struggle, the battles with the Arab neighbors. It's incomplete. Hashem says, you still have a lot of work to do in order for you to see incredible miracles in all areas of life, in the economy, in the weather, and in the military front. So from time to time, we will see a blessing. Like this year, a tremendous amount of rain. Could be they prayed a lot. We don't know. But it's not like that every year. If it would be, if everything would be good in the current situation, the Jews wouldn't get the message. Oh, we must be doing everything right, you see? We're good people. There has to be a way where Hashem communicates to them that something is wrong. The Shabbat is not being observed. And there's unfortunately all kinds of things that happen as a result of that. The attribute of justice is very, very strict, especially with the Jew, and more so in Israel, more so than any other land. Towards the end of the Parasha, Parasha Bechukotai, we are taught the importance of Kedusha in every human being, as well as in sacrifices. And you ask yourself, what is that doing at the end of the Parasha? Well, let's not forget, we began to talk about the lack of holiness, right? That the lack of holiness in our observance of the mitzvot is what led many Jews to become disconnected. So here, at the end of the parasha, we are being reminded what has to be done in order to restore that holiness. So that's where you find a few examples that deal with something which is holy. One of them is called erkecha. Erkecha means that an individual has a certain value depending on his age. If he wants to donate that value to the Hekedesh, to the holy, he can, depending on his age, depending if it's a man or a woman. The Torah prescribes a value. You donated yourself, what is that worth? Look in the Torah, depending on your age, this is what you will contribute. Very interesting. What's the significance of this? Erkecha, from the root erech, reminds us that every human being has value. A lot of people, because they sinned, they think they have no more value. They're worthless. There's no way that they can correct their deeds. And that's the impression a Jew may get after seeing all that punishment and all that suffering. We're worthless. Hashem doesn't like us. Perhaps, God forbid, one may sink into a type of depression, believing that there's no way that Hashem is ever going to atone for his sins. And Hashem says, no. Erkecha. Every human being, not just the Jew, every human being has a value. He's the crown of creation, Jew or non-Jew, depending, of course, on what he does with himself, how he behaves. So this is a reminder, it's a very important reminder, that this is what's necessary. Recall at all times that you have value. Recall that which is holy has value. And therefore, whether a person behaves himself in a holy way or not will make a big difference. Holiness has value. In the same way that here, you're contributing of yourself to that which is holy, to the temple. That means that there's some value to you. In the same way, you should know that a mitzvah has tremendous value, especially if it's observed with holiness, not just empty, in a way that one is totally not connected to it. So this parasha, this section of the Torah that talks about Erkecha, is an important reminder of that not only do we have value, but that holiness, we're talking about a contribution to that which is holy. Holiness has tremendous value too. Otherwise, why contribute to the holiness? What's this all about? That which is holy has tremendous value. But besides Erkecha, there's another interesting mitzvah. And that's a mitzvah that very few people understand properly. It's a mitzvah that is very much misunderstood. And that's the mitzvah of Temurah. Have you heard of Temurah? Somebody says, okay, I'm making a neder, I'm making a promise that I'm bringing this sacrifice to the Bet HaMikdash, to the temple. Very nice. Neder. Neder is a promise, a vow. He could also do a nedava. The nedava is a donation. A neder is much more serious than a donation because you're responsible for your promises, for your vows, much more than for a donation. Okay? So, when the Torah talks about Temurah, it says the following. If you said this will be a sacrifice, make a promise. And then 5 minutes later, you say, I changed my mind. Not this animal, I want to bring that animal to the Bet HaMikdash as a sacrifice. What's the halakha say? What does the Torah tell us that you need to do? Both of them are holy. You shouldn't have changed your mind. As a result of you wanting to change your mind, the first one you intended is going to be holy, and it's going to go to the Bet HaMikdash, and so will the second one that you wanted to exchange for the first one, that one will also be holy. What's going on over here? Again, we're talking about holiness here, because we're talking about sacrifices. The first idea is, neder is serious, a vow, a promise is something important. The Torah tells us, be careful, lo yachel devaro, you cannot annul your word. You promise, you better keep. Words are powerful. Speech is something that is very, very important, something that is very, very special. Don't misuse that power of speech that you have. Treat it as something that is holy. Therefore, if you made a promise, you've said a word, keep it. Otherwise, words, are meaningless. The Torah says, no, words do have meaning, great meaning. A promise, therefore, is something that is holy. It's a commitment to Hashem in this case. Therefore, be careful not to make your words chulin. Lo yachel devaro, don't make your words cheap, unholy. You made a promise, keep it. Okay, all right, if that's the case, then I'm going to keep my promise and bring this korban to the Bet HaMikdash, fine. But why, if I change my mind, I have to bring that one too? I cannot change my mind. I cannot say, well, I prefer this animal over that animal. Why not? What's wrong with that? It's a very interesting mitzvah. Now, we know that the halakha says that if somebody made a mistake in a neder, then it's not a real neder, it's not a real vow. He made a mistake. He didn't intend it. So a mistake is a mistake, fine. Well, isn't this like a mistake? He says, this instead of this. Torah says no. Torah is teaching us a very valuable lesson when it comes to inyanim shebikdusha, that which is holy. That your first thought, if it was a good thought, a positive thought, a holy thought, that counts. It counts. What does it mean? You can't just undo it so easily. If you really did not make a mistake, you really intended to do something, it's special, it's holy. Then why are you changing your mind right now? That changing of your mind, you should know, is coming from the Yetzer Hara. It's coming from the evil inclination. It's not coming from the Kedusha. The Torah is teaching us an important lesson. A lot of times people are awakened, they're excited to do a mitzvah. They have this holiness in them, this divine spark that is lit, that is propelling them, motivating them, encouraging them to do something. They're all excited about it. All of a sudden, they donate. They make a neder. I want to do this. It happens occasionally. That first thought is holy. The second thought is cooling you off already. Oh, no, I'd rather give this, not this, for whatever reason. That's not good. The first one is what matters. The first one counts. In order to understand this, I'm going to share with you a story that really illustrates this very well. There was once a rabbi who took it upon himself to collect funds for an orphan, to marry him off. Obviously, a lot of money was necessary for the wedding expenses, and he took it upon himself, and he went and asked people for money, and Baruch Hashem, he was able to collect 1,000 rubles, which was a lot of money, a lot of money that will cover expenses, furniture, everything. He was very happy. One day he's sitting down looking at the money. He says, why should I give the entire amount to this one orphan? I can give him 500 and that will be very, very good and sufficient. And the other 500 I can give to all the other poor people in town that are desperately in need. But then he caught himself. He says, who's giving me this advice? This second idea? The Yetzer Hara. My first initial thought and plan of raising all the money I can for this poor orphan was holy. And that's what I should stick with. All of a sudden I'm cooling off and having second thoughts about perhaps I should split the money. That's not coming from that same excitement, from that same holy source that I had initially. In other words, his initial idea was the correct one. He should stick to that. That was good. That was positive. Nothing wrong with that. It was beautiful. He succeeded. All of a sudden, he wants to change his mind. Even though he might think, I'm doing a mitzvah, I'm doing many mitzvot now, I'm going to help a lot of people. No. That's already coming from the evil inclination who wants to cool you off and tell you, perhaps don't give it all to him. Share it with others. You know, a lot of people may not think that this is wrong, but the rabbi was right. That's what you intended, that's what you should stick to. That's what you plan on doing, and it's a holy mitzvah, the tzedakah. Stick to it. Don't let anything interfere with that and cool you off, because if anything does try to interfere, it's from the Yetzer Hara, it's from the evil inclination. So we see from this how many times we think of something that is good, positive, and holy. Stick to it. Be careful if 10 minutes later, half an hour later, a day later, people or you on your own might think, well, perhaps I shouldn't give him as much. Perhaps I should do it differently. Be careful with that. It's not necessarily coming from a holy source. The point, therefore, with Temurah, why is the second animal holy as well? The first one is holy because he made a neder. The second one is holy because we don't have so many opportunities to do mitzvot. The Torah wants us to realize that in the same way that the first one is holy, the second one that you wanted to exchange, let that be holy too. Because here you will be, in a sense, grabbing another opportunity to do a beautiful mitzvah. A very important lesson we learn from all of this is that any time we have the opportunity to do something special, we think of it in our thought immediately. As you're thinking about it, talbishoto b'mitzvah, dress it up in a mitzvah, apply it to a mitzvah, because those exciting moments may fade 10 minutes later. Immediately act and do whatever you can with that which is holy. Just want to finish up that it is very important that we realize that in order to maintain that strong link with Hashem, we need to be focused on Kedusha at all times. Without being focused on Kedusha at all times, it could easily happen to anyone that he will just cool off and move away, even though once upon a time he was very observant. Focus is the key. And in order to understand what focus is, I'm going to share with you, and with this will end the story, the famous story with Rabbi Akiva and his friends. Rabbi Akiva and his friends, soon after the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, not too many years later, were walking close to the Temple Mount, and they saw all that rubble. They saw the destruction. They saw fox running in and out. It was not a very, very nice scene. And the rabbis that were going with Rabbi Akiva, his colleagues, were very sad. And Rabbi Akiva says, why are you sad? And they turn to him, you seem to be happy. Why are you happy? He says, why am I happy? I'll tell you why I'm happy. You see this destruction? If all the terrible prophecies of the destruction of the temple came true, all the terrible prophecies of the destruction came true. Now I know for sure that all the good prophecies, the positive ones about Mashiach coming, will come true as well. Amen. See what it is? He was focusing on the positive, focusing on that which is holy. And that's why he was able to connect to it, to relate to it, and to be happy about it. Now obviously we need to be sad when we need to be sad, and realize that things are not going well for us because some things need to be corrected. But at the same time, we need to be encouraged that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not abandon us. And very soon, He will bring us out of the exile and restore the Bet HaMikdash very soon.
Amen.